And I think we are live here at the in-depth GB Entertainment offices. We're going to be taking your questions momentarily. So submit them in the comments and we'll start answering here shortly. We have Elisa in the background. Say hey, Elisa. Hi. She's going to be monitoring them. But before we get to that, just a couple quick notes. First, I just want to really thank everybody for, taking the time to watch our content, commenting, liking, emailing us. It means a lot. We have a small team here in St. Louis between the producers, editors, folks on the business end, and we try to do a lot with a small staff. And so it's the feedback we get from you guys that really motivates us to keep going. I feel like I'm one of the luckiest guys in the world to have the opportunity to have this job. I was talking to Daniel, our longtime lead editor, just moments ago, and we have done over the past 10 seasons now, 120 plus episodes. It's taken us from all over the US and, Alaska and Hawaii to all over the world. We've been to Russia and China multiple times and Africa multiple times and New Zealand and the Philippines. And it's, so much fun. Big thanks to, our staff for working so hard on all of this. And, I get a lot of comments from people, especially in the digital platforms, who don't know that we also air on TV, and then from people on TV that don't know we have these digital platforms. So just a couple quick comments, and then we're going to be taking your questions here momentarily. So send them our way. And are they starting to come in, Elisa? Okay, cool. Yeah. But so where you can watch the show. We have all the platforms listed on our website, grahambensinger.com. But we have 15 plus clips from each taping that we put out on the YouTube channel. We put clips on Facebook as well as our social platforms like Twitter and Instagram. In addition to that, though, you can watch us in taxi cabs in the US. You can watch us in the US on the ABC, NBC, CBS, or Fox stations, where we have our half-hour fully produced episode that airs each week. Typically it's Saturday or Sunday nights after the station's late news. You can go to our website to check air times in your region. If you aren't in the US, internationally, we air on ESPN or Fox Sports, depending on the region, BT Sport in the UK and Ireland, Emirates Airlines if you fly there. So there are a bunch of different places you can check us out, as well as our podcast, where you can watch or where you can listen to the full interview. So, this season, as you've probably seen, we've done everything from spending the day with the NBA's Dwight Howard to going to India for the world's best cricketer, Virat Kohli, to Kelsey Grammer, the actor, at his estates in the Catskill Mountains, to San Francisco for billionaire entrepreneur Charles Schwab, to we just got back from South Africa for The Lion Whisperer, which will be a taping here coming up. So that's what we've done so far. Have a bunch in store still to go this coming season. So thank you again for watching and the support. It really means a lot. And so without further ado, as we're going to take some questions from you guys, what do we have, Lisa?
So the first question is from Osiris56 on YouTube. He says, hey, Graham, any questions you regret asking someone, or maybe a question you regret not asking?
So there are always questions I regret. Well, it'd probably do the same for both. We do these profile interviews with each person that we're featuring, and so we probably put 100 hours of research into each interview preceding the sit down. And I'll sit down with whoever we're profiling anywhere from an hour to 3 hours, but commonly in the 90 minutes to 2 hours range. And, with every person you profile, there's typically some challenge they've had to overcome in their life. And there are lessons learned from that. And it always makes for interesting conversation, but depending on the person, sometimes it's tough to get into that. So there are always, times where I wish I would have led into it differently, or situations where when we watch back the tape, I'm like, if only I had asked this person that. And it's, that sort of stuff drives me absolutely crazy. So yes, there are plenty of those instances. What else we got?
On Facebook, Mark wants to know, who's the best interview you ever had?
Oh man. That's hard. Well, I'd say a couple. The international tapings are always just fun personally, because you get the chance to experience a different part of the world and see the culture. And that's really enjoyable for that reason. In terms of just the substance of the conversation, and I've mentioned this before, Jim Brown, arguably the best football player ever to live, one of the most socially significant athletes of the past century, retires at the height of his career to get into acting, paves the way for Black actors, creates hundreds of Black-owned and operated businesses through his AmeriCAN Foundation. J. Edgar Hoover had FBI spies tracking Brown for the better portion of a decade because they viewed him as a political threat. And the group of people he called friends back in the day were Muhammad Ali, Bill Russell, Frank Sinatra, Hugh Hefner, Richard Pryor, Martin Luther King Jr., and Malcolm X. So the stories he just has are unbelievable. I've sat down with him on a couple of occasions at his home in the Hollywood Hills. I think he's in his 80s now, walks with a cane, but quick to tell you if you ask a stupid question. So, there's kind of this pressure going into a conversation with somebody like that, because there's just so much history there. But it's always a treat. And so that's one I enjoy a lot. We were able to spend the better portion of a week in the Bahamas with Sir Richard Branson, taping an episode that was fascinating. Somebody I'd wanted to book for years. I'd been trying for 5 years, and then to finally land somebody like that was incredible. Also because many of the people we feature, in fact, most of the people we feature, don't need to do media. Or at least our show. We're this small little operation from St. Louis, and while we're doing 1.5 million television viewers a week and a couple million plus digital views a week, it's a real audience now, especially compared to when we started 9-10 years ago. But these star athletes or celebrities that we profile have huge followings. So it's always special when we're able to book somebody that we've been working on for years.
On YouTube, Chris wants to know if, when you go into your interviews, are there any questions that are off limits?
Generally not. That's something we typically, that's not really something we agree to. I will say, however, there are certain people that, from conversations leading into the booking with either the figure directly, if we, book the person just direct, or if we're dealing with the rep, it's pretty obvious from conversations in the booking process if there are questions or topics that they just aren't going to enjoy talking about. And so then if you go there, you kind of go there your own peril, and you risk jeopardizing the rest of the taping. And sometimes you choose to go there based on how well the conversation's going, and you feel the person's willing to open up, or simply because you feel like it's important enough that it needs to be covered. And other times you just realize it's not worth it. And so that's typically how we handle situations like that.
Multiple people on YouTube and Facebook are curious about the one interview you wish you could land, but maybe haven't or are still working on.
Oh my gosh, there are so many. I mean, I can list off some that come to mind. Michael Jordan, Lance Armstrong, Tiger Woods, LeBron, heads of state. We've profiled Prince Albert before, but I'd love the chance to interview a sitting president. So many people, and there are lots that we're working on an ongoing basis. I'm oftentimes bouncing around to different cities, sometimes even if I'm international, to different countries, simply for the purpose of taking somebody out for coffee or a bite in effort to try and book that person or their client for a taping on our show. So it is, the booking process is ongoing. Many bookings will just take years because, if we're just asking for 5, 10, 15 minutes, that's much easier to accommodate than a few hours or half a day or, multiple days, depending on the individual.
So that kind of leads us to a question from Sean on Facebook. He wants to know kind of the process of how the show happened and how we get an episode on the air.
How the show happened and how we get an episode on the air. So I'm 33. I started putting the show together, I guess, when I was 22. I started with an internet radio show I developed when I was in 8th grade, 14 years old in St. Louis. One thing led to the next, built that up in high school, started freelancing for ESPN going into college. Went to college for a year and a half, but left because I was getting good work opportunities. And height of the financial crisis, March of 2009, I ended up getting laid off. And I always struggled with the fact that I would do these hour-long interviews and work with the producer after the interview, but I never had control over what aired. And more often than not, only like 30 seconds of the most controversial remarks from the interview would make TV. And I struggled with that because I understood from a news entity's perspective, there's limited time. You have to air the most newsworthy content. But then I also understood from the athlete's perspective, they're like, why the heck am I sitting down with this kid if I'm not going to get a fair shake? And so I didn't have the resume to warrant anybody giving me the type of platform that I was looking for to be able to, fairly tell these stories in a long format setting. So I just thought, let's see if I can figure out how to create it on my own. And so at the time, all I knew how to do was conduct, a half decent interview and book a guest. So it took about a year and a half to figure out the business model, sign on the early distribution partners, figure out how to get it funded by finding advertisers. I had no idea how to produce a show. So it was just kind of learning as you went along. And it still very much is. But, then you travel the country signing on TV stations to carry it. As the audience size grows, that allows you to have, an audience size to big enough to bring on more advertisers, which allows you to go to more interesting places to tape episodes and so on. So very much a work in progress. The show is a long way to go to get it to where I'd like it to be. But it's far and away the most satisfying work also I've ever had the opportunity to do, because you're involved with every facet of building something. And it's also just neat being able to develop a team and have, different people that we've been fortunate to bring into our, St. Louis office that's helping us slowly grow the show as well.
On YouTube, Kevdon, he wants to know, if you weren't doing this, what would your fallback career be?
I have no idea, actually. Yeah, I don't think I would be a very good employee at this point. I kind of probably my biggest downside is my biggest asset, which is I've kind of done what I've wanted to do, sometimes without regard for consequences, and that has its benefits, because if you really believe in something, I mean, so many people told me no, or I couldn't do it, or it's just that what you want to do isn't going to happen. But if you just kind of keep charging ahead, regardless the obstacles in your way, I think you generally can figure it out. This was the first thing that I ever had the opportunity to do professionally, where there was a direct correlation between time investment and results. In prior roles, when I was employed by somebody, I could, work my butt off, but I might not see the results, or, it might not be viewed favorably by my employer. Whereas with this, I found something where, if you invest the time, you can see the tangible results. And that's really exciting to me. When I was growing up, I wanted to be a baseball player. When I was in high school, I wanted to be a lawyer. But it wasn't really until I was going into college that I had any idea that this could actually, something in media could be a career for me. So I really didn't give it too much thought until I learned that I could turn it into something. And I have absolutely no idea what else I would do besides this. What do you think, Elisa?
I think it's good that you don't quit your day job.
Yeah.
So on Facebook, Alex wants to know if, when you're interviewing someone, is it hard to keep the conversation flowing? He says some other interviews it's kind of painful to watch, but you seem to keep the conversation going. How do you do that? Well,
that's kind of you to say. I would, some of my producers would argue that I'm quite boring at times in these interviews. For me, it's just all about preparation. I don't think I have anything going for me whatsoever other than the amount of time we put into preparing. And so if you know everything you can possibly know about somebody's life going into a profile interview, then there's going to be no lack of, questions to ask the person about. So I also have, an extensive number of pre-produced questions that I've come up with that I have on note cards. So there's, always plenty of questions, and probably to the point of exhaustion sometimes for the people that we're profiling.
On YouTube, Joshua wants to know if you've ever been starstruck, or another person asked if you've ever been scared by someone you've been interviewing.
Starstruck and scared. I'm sure I don't know. Yeah, I mean, the answer is yes. I'm trying to think of somebody that comes to mind immediately. It's kind of funny. Actually, I remember one of my very early ones that wasn't for this show, but was when I was doing work for NBC when I was like 21 years old. I got an interview with then Commissioner David Stern, and for some reason, I was just scared, or this scared meaning really nervous going into the interview. And I remember sitting down with him, and we're before the cameras start rolling. You have back then it was like you had a couple minutes beforehand because the interviews weren't as long. Now we could have 10, 15 minutes with somebody before the cameras actually go on, where you're just kind of BSing. And I remember Stern saying to me, like laughingly, "You were nervous," and it was like so humiliating to me that he could actually see it. And what I kind of told myself from that point forward is, I need to view myself as, even though I'm definitely not, I need to view myself as an equal to, or a peer to, whoever I'm sitting down with. And even if you yourself don't believe it, as long as you project that confidence, it makes a big difference to the flow of the conversation, how they view you, and the extent to which they engage. So that's one that I was nervous for. I've had others where I got into it once a little bit with Pete Rose, but that ended well, and he was laughing by the end of the interview. So yeah, those are a couple that stick out.
So on YouTube, Greg wants to know if you got to keep one of Daly's jackets. Has there ever been a piece of a present or a piece of paraphernalia that you really wanted and you walked away with? Yeah,
so one of John Daly's sport coats, that's what he's asking. So I actually, I don't know if you saw this in the clip or the picture we posted, but he took me in his closet, and he had just tons and tons of these colorful sport coats. So he, on camera ended up picking one out for me and telling me I could take it home. And I actually think I ended up having him sign it. And then we were sponsored, or I was sponsored by Hugo Boss at the time. They were providing the clothing for the show. And then John Barbados after that, which is an amazing deal. It gives me the chance to look reasonably stylish where I otherwise definitely would not. But the then marketing lead for Hugo Boss, I knew was a big Alabama John Daly fan, so I ended up mailing him the jacket that Daly gave to me, and he was really excited.
Have you, on Facebook, Steve wants to know if you've ever developed any personal relationships or friendships with people that you interviewed. Is there anyone you still stay in touch with? Sure.
There are a number of people that I stay in touch with who we've profiled for episodes before. I wouldn't say, though, I'm particularly close to any of them. I mean, there are some that I'd say are acquaintances, or, when I see them, we'll catch up on occasion. But my closest friends are the same couple friends I've actually had since middle school.
On YouTube, there are a bunch of people asking what the best piece of advice you've gotten and what the one piece of advice you could give someone who's wanting to start out in the industry would be.
Actually, and I don't even know if I've told them this, probably one of the guys I'm closest to in that's a big time. One of the guys in the industry among like big time broadcasters that close to is Chris Fowler of ESPN, College Game Day, and college football and tennis fame. And I actually randomly met him in St. Louis when it was either in middle school or high school, and he was in town for actually college basketball broadcast work at the time. And he came on my radio show that I was hosting at the time, and we've kept in touch ever since. And we get together, a few times every year. Just really genuinely nice guy. And early on, when he had no business giving me the time of day. He would always give me advice and, meet me for a coffee. And I so appreciated that. And I remember like early on when I was first starting to do on-air work, I was just trying to do everything, like be able to have experience in every facet of the industry, because I was told by everybody that, that's what people are looking for now. You need to be really versatile so you can do everything. And that made sense because that makes you most, hireable for, a diverse number of positions. But, I remember him saying to me, what if you just focused on one thing to try and get really good at? And it wasn't until like that moment that he validated for me that if interviewing is what I really enjoy, why not just try and invest all my time in that to get as much experience and as many reps as I could in interview setting to try and increase my chances at succeeding in the field that I was most interested in. So it was actually like that piece of advice that made an enormous difference for me in my career. And, let me be clear, I have like a very, very long way to go to get to where I'd like to get to professionally. But it was that advice that certainly made a big difference to me early on.
On Facebook, Steven said he really loved the Steve-O interview. He found it to be very inspiring, actually. Is there anyone you've interviewed who's inspired you or surprised you?
First, I love Steve-O as well. Steve-O is a class act, genuinely nice individual. I know that's the second time I've said that about somebody, but also just a ton of fun to tape with. And he's somebody who just brings it for the taping. If he commits to do something, he's going to go all in. And we had, a lot of fun. I mean, heck, he like set off a smoke grenade in his house and did, I think, tens of thousands of dollars worth of damage to his media room because he wanted to make for good TV for us. And that's aside from him letting me, light his hair on fire and creating a fireball on top of his head. I actually find the large majority of people that we profile inspiring and motivating, because most of the people that we profile for episodes are very successful and have had, colorful lives. So, we feature people that we're really interested in featuring. So yeah, I have to pinch myself sometimes because, we're sitting, a couple months ago, I spent half the day with Charles Schwab taping an episode. And I know a lot of you are probably sports fans watching, and, on a handful of occasions each season, we feature folks with a little bit of a looser connection to sport, Schwab being one of them. But the man's worth what, $7-8 billion, is a self-made entrepreneur, grew up with nothing, has severe dyslexia, and has built this enormously successful financial institution. And here I am, like, spending half the day with him. Like, who am I? So I pinch myself all the time because I'm sitting across from these individuals and they're opening up about their path to success and their life story. And so that's what I enjoy so much about it. And I find myself oftentimes coming out of these conversations so motivated to just attack whatever it is that I'm wanting to do, because, oftentimes the people that we're sitting down with have come from really, really tough backgrounds to achieve tons of success. So it's inspiring.
On Facebook, Dylan wants to know what the favorite place that you've traveled to, favorite place you visited?
Well, for me, hands down, my favorite place I've ever been is New Zealand. That is, in my opinion, the most stunningly beautiful place in the world. It looks like fake to me. Mountains, lake, ocean, not a lot of people. I'm not one for, big cities. And so I absolutely love it there. Been to Africa a handful of occasions before. Africa's a stunningly beautiful continent. Patagonia region of Chile is really pretty. Torres del Paine National Park. Over the summer, I was in Norway in the Lofoten Islands, which is high above the Arctic Circle. The time of year I was there is light 24 hours a day. I like hiking. They have great hiking there. Switzerland's beautiful. So for me, it's more like mountainous regions that I like a lot. But those are some of the places that, stick out to me.
Apparently you the goat. That's a comment we're kidding.
Yeah, right.
Is there anyone that you interviewed where they surprised you with their personality going in, or that that you just really got the sense that this person was really cool or really interesting that may not have been initially?
Oh man, I'm surprised all the time by people. I mean, some people you also think will be the nicest people ever going into a sit down are surprisingly, grumpy too. We did one with Dwight Howard, several months back. Dwight is somebody who's gotten a lot of criticism over the years, much of which is probably deserved. But I found him to be completely different than I was otherwise, expecting. He's somebody that, at one point I think was eating the equivalent of a dozen candy bars worth of sugar a day, and has, transformed his eating habits where, he lost, I think, like 30 pounds in the off season because he's upended his diet to, something very strict, very healthy. He is, you always hear, athletes saying they want to be actors, and Dwight, is no different in that regard and being interested in Hollywood, but he's also like actually getting into funding and producing movies. And so he's somebody that, on the surface, before you really prepare and meet him, you might be thinking one thing, and then you actually get to spend time with the person and realize they're much different. So that sort of thing happens a lot.
Do you like to read?
Yes, I love to read. I think that's one of the more enjoyable parts for me of these tapings is the preparation that we do going into it. I'll read for probably the equivalent of days as part of the preparation for these tapings. I, increasingly find myself too addicted to the cell phone. So when I can disconnect from devices to just focus on the preparation for these tapings, the process of that to me is one of my absolute favorite things to do. Almost as enjoyable as the actual interview.
Just a couple more questions, probably.
Yeah, and thank you guys for again watching our content too. I can't thank everybody enough, whether it's digitally or on television. Oftentimes too, and if you haven't yet, send in suggestions for who you'd like us to feature for upcoming episodes, because on many occasions we have made bookings because of recommendations that you've sent in. We have ongoing guest booking conversations, and whenever good ideas are sent in, we will bring those up as part of those conversations. So please continue to do that. You can comment on the YouTube channel. You can email me, Graham at grahambensinger.com, or send them in through Instagram, Twitter, wherever. So
here's a fun one. What's your favorite kind of potato chip, Graham?
I don't even like potato chips that much.
Junk food at all?
Yeah, sure. Anything that's unhealthy, I will eat, and probably eat too much of. So I try my best to stay away from it, because it's not fun, seeing yourself on the screen when you put on a little bit of weight.
Okay. I think one more.
All right.
Is there any?
And Elisa's our PR digital manager, by the way, who's doing an awesome job.
Is there any one interview or person that you wish you could go back and do again? Either revisit the interview or just catch up with that individual.
Sure. O.J. Simpson. I see somebody commenting there about O.J. He was one of my very first interviews, actually, when I was in high school. I called his agent like twice a week for a year and a half, trying to get a taping with OJ. And then one day he called me up saying OJ was going to be in St. Louis and he'll, sit down with you. At the last minute, it was just for my then radio show. At the last minute, I set up a little handheld video camera. There's no lighting. This isn't professionally produced. And then Good Morning America ends up wanting to air it, flies me to New York. Diane Sawyer interviews me on the GMA couch about the interview. I subsequently sat down with them again for ESPN a year and a half or so later, that then got a lot of exposure. But that was post criminal trial. But that was, 15-ish years ago now. I've had the opportunity to see him since, and he's somebody that I find fascinating, really interesting story. Been through a lot, and regardless what anybody thinks of him, he's a really interesting interview. So he's somebody I'd love to sit down with again.
Okay.
Is that it, Elisa?
I think that's it for tonight.
All right. So thank you guys again for watching. If you want, we'll continue to do more of these, because it's always fun, getting your questions. And again, I appreciate all the support. What do I need to say about subscribing?
Oh, they need to hit that bell on YouTube to subscribe, and they need to follow us on Facebook.
Yeah, and on Instagram and Twitter too. We got to get the social followings up, And if you just watch digitally and you're in the US, be sure to check out our television show. It's most often Sunday nights in most cities, sometimes Saturday nights as well, on the ABC, NBC, CBS, or Fox station, or on regional sports television networks. You can check airing times, grahambensinger.com, to see where it airs in your region. But thank you again for checking this out. We'll do it some more, and I appreciate you guys watching. If I can figure out now how to turn this off.
Hit off button.
And ending stream.